wanted to make videos kind of documenting my journey with my chronic health conditions and all of that. I had attempted to do that and talk about my experience with them and kind of share a little bit of my story and my journey, and my diagnoses journey or whatever. For a little bit I was making videos talking about different aspects of it and all of that, and then I just scrapped it all. And I tend to do that because I think of a few reasons. I was kind of hesitant to talk about my chronic health issues because I felt a lot of like conflicting feelings about it. I felt like, who really wants to hear about my experience with chronic health issues, and it's not really like a positive thing to talk about or share. So I just felt like maybe it wouldn't be something that very many people would really be interested in. And then also just feeling like I struggle with some kind of like a feeling of I'm a pretty private person a lot of the time, but then I also tend to overshare. So there's no real balance between the two, and it's either I overshare or I am very much a private person. So I kind of struggle with that internally, I think, and trying to figure out, all of that. But usually for New Year's resolutions, I do things like try to read more or make up certain goals for myself with like praying or trying to exercise a little bit or something like that. And sometimes I don't do it perfectly, and sometimes I am okay with some of it, and at the end of the year I feel pretty satisfied with it. And then sometimes certain things I just completely fail at, and it's not something that I end up sticking with past like even a week. And then sometimes I do really well with them. But I'm not really sure how this one's going to go, but I'm going to attempt to try to share my experience again and try to do it in a consistent manner and to show the good and the bad, like the good days and the bad days, and just everything that I feel might be of importance to share. Another reason why I feel like I scrap a lot of these videos that I try to make is because I feel like it's hard for me to pick just one topic and kind of stick with that. And this past year I was diagnosed with autism and ADHD. I also have PTSD and anxiety. So I will be sharing some things about those parts of myself and my life. But I think that part of those neurodivergences that I have, the autistic, I think part of me really likes to focus in on one particular subject and topic. But then the ADHD part of me is like really just wanting to not label myself as like one particular, not focus so much and make it so much a focus that it becomes like my identity, I guess. So I think that instead of just documenting only my chronic health issues and only talking about that, I will also maybe share some other things that I think about, or just things that I feel like maybe would be of some sort of significance to make a video about. But another reason why I want to do this, and this is part of this year's New Year's resolution for me, is to try to kind of put my story out there and put myself out there, because I feel like it's hard for me to do that sometimes. I feel like it's a challenge for me, and my mom went through a lot health-wise, mental health-wise, and physical health-wise. The medical system really failed her. She passed away not this past August, but the one before that. So it's been about a year and some months now. And I don't feel ever had her story or, certain aspects of it really acknowledged or told. And so in some ways, I feel like I want to talk about these things also in honor of my mom, and to just, give awareness and stuff like that. I did not always have a very good relationship with my mom. I shouldn't say it so casually, I guess, because I did not have a good relationship with my mom for much of my life for various reasons, and maybe I will get into that too and talk about that. But it was a very interesting relationship that I shared with her, because there was a lot of betrayal, there was a lot of unanswered questions. There's so much to my life that to this day I do not have answers for or to, because I'm not really sure what happened in regards to so much. But at the same time, I can remember certain years of my life from probably, I would say, 1993 to 1990, somewhere around 98 or 99, where I adored my mom. I loved her, and I'm not saying I don't love my mom. I still do, but I really felt like a deep love for her, a deep care for her, I guess, around those years. And those are probably the better years that I spent with my mom. So I maybe will share a little bit about that too, and just things that I noticed, as being her daughter, and the conditions that she had and all of that. But I have been diagnosed with certain medical conditions, and they are not really widely known or talked about or understood, I think, even in the medical community. And when I was in the process of trying to figure out what was wrong with me exactly, I was very scared. And I remember just feeling alone and afraid, and wondering if I was ever going to find answers, or what it was exactly that I was experiencing or dealing with, or if I was going to find answers, basically. So I took to the internet, and I watched a lot of YouTube videos and a lot of people sharing experiences, tried to find similar things that I was experiencing. And I found a lot of help in coming across people who had the same kind of conditions that I do, sharing their story. So I know that at some point, me sitting there as, a undiagnosed and unaware person at that time, and coming across those videos, maybe somebody else can come across mine and find some sort of help or some sort of answers. So I feel like it's almost like a necessity for me to share my story, so that I can maybe help somebody like I was helped. But I also feel like it's important for me to share and talk about, because when I was in the process of it all, and I was not knowing what was going on and not having answers. Sorry if I'm a little bit spacey right now. I had lab work done today, and they took quite a bit of labs, and just felt kind of brain fog after that. But I which isn't new for me, I guess, even without labs. But I in the process, in the beginning of trying to figure it all out and not having answers and everything like that, I prayed. I went to I'm Catholic, and there is a shrine near where I live that is a place where Mary appeared to a sister or a nun that was there many years ago. And so they kind of created this sanctuary in this shrine, and it is a place where there's been a lot of miraculous healings and things like that have taken place there. And I just find it very peaceful. It's been one of my favorite places to just go sometimes and sit outside and eat lunch or whatever. So I thought that it would be good for me around that time, when I was struggling and just did not feel good and did not have answers, to go and say some prayers and stuff like that. So I did. And I remember asking for prayers and asking for intercession and for help to find answers, and that God would help me to understand what it was that was going on, because it seemed to me like it was more than just me. It was a lot of people that I knew from my family that seemed to be struggling with either mental health or neurodivergence or physical kind of things, and it seemed like there was some kind of a genetic component to it. And I just felt like I felt intuitively like there was something that would explain it all, but I wasn't sure, what it was. And so after I prayed that, I ended up finding answers. I ended up finding so many answers that it was like a miracle for me, because the way that these conditions are pieced together and kind of come together to form like a greater understanding, they're all connected, is pretty interesting, and it's fascinating to me. It's, I guess, one of my hyperfixations, because it's just so fascinating to me, and because I didn't have the awareness of them before, but I lived with these conditions since birth pretty much. So I discovered that I have postural orthostatic tachycardia syndrome, or dysautonomia, hypermobility spectrum disorder. I'm in the process of seeing somebody to be diagnosed with Ehlers-Danlos syndrome. That has been a real struggle, because it's been very hard to find a specialist who can and is able to diagnose EDS, especially near me for some reason. So I've been on a wait list for over 2 years with that. And prior to that, I was, trying to find someone who was able to do that for about a year and a half, maybe 2 years. So in total, it's been about 4 years now. And then I was diagnosed with mast cell activation disorder and chronic GI issues, pretty severe. And I was told that I had ME/CFS, myalgic encephalomyelitis, or chronic fatigue syndrome. And my mom had mitochondrial disease, which is similar in symptoms, I think, as ME/CFS. So they haven't ruled out mitochondrial disease, but they also don't think that that's what I have. But it gets very complicated when it comes down to it all, because of just everything involved with it, and how these conditions are a lot of the time labeled as being rare, but they're really not rare. They're just, I think, misunderstood or misdiagnosed. So I just wanted to share my experience with them and talk about what it's been like, or whatever. So my daughter, who she is the youngest of my kids, she has a lot of the same kinds of conditions that I do, or that my mom did. So she also has hypermobility. She has allergies. She hasn't been diagnosed with mast cell like I have. My allergist has suspected that she has it, but she hasn't ever been diagnosed with it yet. But she does have pretty significant severe food allergies, like peanuts. She has a very severe allergy to dust mites and cats as well. And then she was diagnosed autistic and sensory processing disorder when she was 3 years old. So when I was in the process of uncovering all of this information, I first was told, when I was in the middle of one of my flare-ups, from my primary care doctor, who actually isn't even a doctor. He's like a physician's assistant, I think. But it's interesting, because he was the one who came to the conclusion that what I actually had was POTS. So when I was in the middle of my POTS flare, he had suggested that I look up POTS and let him know what I thought about it, and I had looked it up prior to him mentioning it, and it did sound like what I was experiencing. But I didn't feel like I was really confident in saying that that's what it was for sure. I had a friend who was a nurse, and I mentioned it to her, and she said, I do think that that is what you have. You have POTS. And it took about 2 years after that for me to officially be diagnosed with POTS. But after I was told that that's what I had, and I was kind of researching things, I think even before that's what I was told I had, and I was looking more into things, I was able to uncover that POTS is linked to mast cell activation disorder, and also linked to Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, and also linked to ADHD and autism. And in this day and age where they're trying to figure out, what causes autism and how to fix autism and all of that, I just find it fascinating because it is genetic a lot of the time. I see that there's all these things out there, like, is it vaccines? Is it Tylenol? Is it this or is it that? And, maybe somewhere along the line there is something that got mutated through some kind of a gene or something that was, or DNA that was affected by, I don't know, maybe vaccines of some sort or some, somewhere along the way. And it just generationally then kind of continued on. So I'm not saying like that's not at all a possibility or something like that. But generally speaking, I don't think that there is necessarily a cause of autism, in my personal opinion. I think it's just a different way of processing information in the world and viewing information and taking it in. And I think that's actually all it is, and doesn't necessarily need to be fixed. I think it needs to be understood and accepted more, and just I can't speak, I guess, for all autistic people or everybody who has autism, but I know that if autism were to not be a thing for me, I would feel not like myself at all, because it's not like autism makes up who I am, but it makes up how I process things. It makes up how I experience the world. And if that was different, I just feel like I don't even know, I would have to kind of figure out who am I, because this is what it's been like for me for my whole life. I think it's also just a different sensitivity to the world around you, and a very big, I think, misinformation or misunderstanding about it is that autistic people don't have empathy, they lack empathy. And I think because we have a hard time sometimes conveying how we're thinking or how we're feeling or expressing, our emotions like neurotypicals do, it comes off that way. But you can clearly see that so many autistic people actually have a great deal of empathy, sometimes to an excessive amount, and it becomes overwhelming, and it overloads your nervous system and just makes you feel like it's almost too much sometimes. So I just wanted to share my experience, talk a little bit about what it's been like for me, and to share different things that I am going through. So currently I am on a handful of medications or supplements. I have to take Miralax daily for my digestive system to work. I am on Pepcid or famotidine. I'm supposed to take it 2 times a day, but I started off at once a day because my daughter's allergist told me that would be smart so that I didn't get sick, because I need, in his words, pediatric doses, because I am very sensitive to like side effects and things like that. So I've been taking just 1 dose a day of the Pepcid so far. And then Zyrtec once a day at the highest dose. I think it's 10 milliliters. And then I was prescribed from my allergist something called cromolyn sodium. So this is what it looks like. This is the box that it comes in. And I have a lot of anxiety around medications, around taking new medication especially, partially because of the side effects, and I wonder, is it going to make me feel more sick? Is it going to make me feel better? And then if you read the side effects of pretty much anything and everything, it will tell you that it's possible to have an allergic reaction, like anaphylaxis from it. Because my daughter has such a severe like peanut allergy, I have seen her have pretty significant reactions. I have had reactions personally in terms of like hives and throat tightness and things like that. So anything that tells me that I could potentially have an anaphylactic reaction, I will get extremely high anxiety over. So when I was prescribed the Miralax, I actually put off taking that for a while and just tried to try other alternative things like prunes and prune juice and water and fiber, and I even tried stool softeners, which did not work for me at all. So I finally had to give in to the Miralax, and I sat in the parking lot of the hospital while I took the first dose just to make sure I wasn't going to have some kind of a reaction to it. That sounds a little bit extreme and kind of like dramatic for trying a new medication to most people, I'm sure. But when you have mast cell activation disorder, or you have these sensitivities, I think that it will make sense if you have it, because you'll understand and you'll know, like, it can be anything that triggers it. It can be food coloring, food dyes. I'm very sensitive to yellow number 6 and yellow number 5 and sulfites, so I have to avoid those foods and stuff like that. But it comes in a foil pouch like this, and there's little vials in here filled with the cromolyn sodium, and I am going to kind of document what it's like when I take it. I'm going to talk about what it tastes like, if there's side effects, if I feel, and I'm probably different from other people, some people it probably would affect a lot differently, but I'm just going to share my experience, and maybe it will be helpful for somebody else. I've read and researched what it's like taking this medication, and I've seen some people say it's made like their dysautonomia worse, their POTS symptoms worse, and their GI symptoms really bad. But then I've seen a lot of people that said that this was a game changer for them and it made them feel so much better. So I want to see what it does for me, and I want to see if it helps me, and my goal is to try to take it as recommended, which is 4 times a day, once before every meal. So once before breakfast, once before lunch, once before dinner, and then once at bedtime. And to take it that way for a year, and then see where I am next year at this time and how I feel. And that's my goal, and that's what I would like to try to do this year for my New Year's resolution. And to try to go on a more like a histamine-friendly, low histamine diet, which I had tried previously but wasn't able to stick with it very long. I think I only tried it for like 3 weeks maybe. So this time I want to try my best to stick with it as best as I can. I'm not going to aim for perfection in any of this, but just continuing to try my best, and to see if I can get myself feeling a little bit better. And yeah, so I thought that I would just kind of talk about my experience again and share it, and maybe share other aspects of things besides just like taking a video like this, I guess, and just documenting my journey. I think it would be interesting too for me to look back on. There's been a lot of medical procedures that I've gone through or had already. Like I had a colonoscopy a few years ago, and I was so afraid of that. I was so afraid that I put it off for like 2 years when it was absolutely necessary for me to do. And I wanted to document that experience, and I tried to, but then my phone really wasn't working very well at the time, and ended up losing the videos and the documentation of it. But I know that there's other people out there who probably have anxiety like I do around medical things and medical trauma, especially if you have chronic illness, and just kind of wanted to be another voice or face for these conditions, and hopefully it can be helpful to somebody, like it's been helpful to me to see other people sharing their story. So that's my goal in it, and that's my plan. And hopefully I don't scrap this all this time. Hopefully I actually stick with it and continue on and see where it goes. So that is it for this video, and I hope everybody has a good day and is staying safe.